In a small, broken house by the river, a 12-year-old boy named Jun would sing every night. He wasn't singing for fame or applause, but to quiet the rumbling in his stomach, to forget the gnawing hunger. His mother sold vegetables by the roadside, her hands calloused and her eyes always tired. His father, he'd been gone for years, a ghost in their memories. Sometimes, Jun sang to the moon. His voice, clear and pure, would float through the dark, winding alleys of the barangay, like a prayer that no one ever seemed to answer. Nobody believed him. How could a boy with no shoes, no microphone, and no future ever stand on a real stage? They saw a poor kid, not a star. But one night, something shifted. While singing outside a small eatery, hoping for a few coins, a stranger stopped. He didn't just walk by, he listened. Then, he smeared a smile that held a kindness Jun had never seen before. The stranger asked him to sing just one song. Hotel California. No one knew why that song. No one knew what that moment truly meant. But when Jun sang, the city's noise seemed to fade into a respectful hush. And when he finally stepped onto a real stage, under the blinding lights, he carried a secret in his heart. A secret that made even the judges cry. He never told anyone what it was. But that night, everyone felt it. Jun lived in a small bamboo house at the edge of town, where the river met the road. Every morning, he'd wake up to the roar of tricycles and the familiar smell of dried fish frying in the neighbor's kitchen. The air was heavy with dust. Yet he would always find a reason to smile because somewhere deep inside him, a song was always playing. His mother, Aling Rosa, would leave before the sun rose to sell vegetables in the market. She always kissed his forehead before she left. "Pray first, my son," she'd whisper, trying to hide her weary eyes. His younger sister, Liza, would often sit by the window, humming along whenever Jun practiced his songs with a broken karaoke mic they'd be found in a junk shop. Sometimes, when the rain poured through the holes in their roof, Jun would close his eyes and imagine the sound was applause, thousands of people cheering, bright lights flashing, his voice echoing through a grand theater. But in reality, it was just the wind whistling through the Nepa walls, the rustle of banana leaves, and his sister's soft laughter. He sang every night to forget the hunger, to forget the pain, and somehow, in that tiny house, by the river, his dream began to breathe quietly, but with a strength that refused to die. One afternoon, as the sun burned low over the tin roofs, Jun ran to the market to bring his mother lunch, but when he got to her stall, it was empty. The vegetables were gone. Her apron was left hanging on the chair, still damp with sweat and tears. A nearby vendor whispered, "Ali and Rosa collapsed." They took her to the hospital. Jun froze. His small hand shook as he clutched the cold plastic container of rice and dried fish. The hospital was far too far for a boy with no money for a jeep, so he ran. He ran through the crowded streets, through the suffocating heat, through the constant blare of horns and tricycles. When he finally arrived, breathless and terrified, he saw his mother lying still, her breathing weak and shallow. The nurse said they needed tests, medicine, money. The words sounded heavier than the entire world. That night, Jun didn't sing. He just sat by his mother's bedside, staring out the window. Outside, the city lights flickered like distant stars he could never hope to touch. Then, suddenly, a man in a cap entered the room. He moved quietly, placing something on the small table beside the bed. It was an old cassette tape. A note beside it simply read, "Play this when you're ready." Jun's heart pounded in his chest. Who was this man? And what was on that tape? Days turned into weeks. The hospital bills piled up like mountains. Jun couldn't climb. His mother grew weaker, her voice fading into faint whispers. The cassette tape sat on the table, untouched, a silent, waiting mystery. Jun wanted to listen, but a deep fear always held him back. What if it carried a truth he wasn't ready to face? He tried singing again by the roadside, hoping to earn a few coins for his mother's medicine. But people just rushed past. Too busy. Too tired. Some laughed at him. One man scoffed. You'd be better off studying. Singing won't feed you. His voice began to crack, more from hunger and heartbreak than from strain. The dream that once burned so brightly inside him began to flicker and fade. One evening, as he sat outside the hospital, his little sister Liza brought him a piece of bread, half of what she had saved from her school lunch. Yo, she did. Kuya, she said softly. That small act of kindness, that simple love, broke something inside him. He looked up at the stars and whispered, "Why, Lord, if this was just a dream, why did you give it to me?" His tears fell silently, mixing with the dust and the distant city lights. And yet, somewhere deep in that suffocating darkness, a small voice still whispered back, asterisk, "Sing, Junjun, just one more time, dot." Asterisk. One night. As the rain poured hard against the hospital windows, Junjun finally reached for the cassette tape. His hands trembled as he placed it into an old player he had borrowed from the nurse's station. The tape clicked, and then a voice, soft, shaky, yet so familiar. "Anak, my son, if you're hearing this, it means I couldn't be there to see your dream come true. Don't stop singing. Junjun, your father." He loved that song, Hotel California. It was the last one he sang before he left to find work abroad. Junjun froze, his breath caught in his throat. The voice wasn't a stranger's. It was his father's. The man who had disappeared years ago now, speaking to him through the static of an old tape. "If someone gives you this," the voice continued, "it means I'm still listening. Wherever you sing, I'll be there. Don't be afraid." Junjun covered his face as unstoppable tears streamed down his cheeks. The stranger who left the tape. It was him. It was his father, the man he thought had forgotten them. Outside, the rain softened to a gentle patter. His mother stirred in her sleep, whispering his name. For the first time in months, Junjun smiled a broken, trembling smile. Because now, he knew. His song wasn't just his dream. It was his father's love, still waiting to be heard. The next morning, Junjun walked toward the audition hall with his father's cassette tape safely in his pocket. His clothes were worn, his shoes patched with tape, but his heart felt brand new. Inside, the stage lights were blinding, and the judges' faces looked cold and unimpressed. He took the microphone, closed his eyes, and whispered, "This is for you, Papa." Then he sang Hotel California. But this time, it wasn't just a song. It was a cry, a prayer, a promise. Every note carried the pain of hunger, the warmth of his mother's hands, the sound of his father's voice echoing through the static. The entire audience fell silent. People started wiping tears from their eyes. The judges leaned forward, their expressions softening with every line. And when Junjun reached the last word, the hall erupted. The applause thundered like rain on their tin roof. One judge stood up, his own hand trembling, and slammed the golden buzzer. Gold confetti rained down like falling stars, showering not just Junjun, but every soul in that room that had ever felt forgotten. In that shining moment, his voice didn't just heal his own heart. It healed everyone who was listening. Junjun bowed his head, whispering, "Thank you." And for a brief, quiet second, the world finally listened.